Welcome to the Fervent Four. Did you know that only 4% of businesses ever cross the annual $1 million revenue mark? Question mark. Hello, I'm Zack Miller, author of Anomaly. With me today, I have my co-host Tim Ryan, lead man at StartWheel.org. Thank you so much for joining us. The Fervent Four is a weekly show each and every Thursday at 11 a.m. dedicated to sharing insights into growing a world-class business no matter the climate. This week, we have Nate Marcus of OccasionGenius with us. Nate, what's up?
Hey,
Nate, good to see you.
You too. Thanks for having me.
When I was putting together the stream, the broadcast to do this, I texted Tim after he had sent me kind of the, the icon for the graphic for this week's episode. And I didn't realize this until I saw it, but OccasionGenius is one word.
That's right. Capital O, capital G.
I like the OG. That's interesting aspect of it. I literally, when I was texting him, I was like, "Is this right?" Because every once in a while, there's a fumble rooski in there, and we just screw something up. And I, before I had sent the broadcast out to say, "Hey, we're going to be live," I wanted to make sure it was there. So, conscious effort. It sounds like to do that. Was that a hard decision? Why'd you make it? Because I think it's unique that you have such a long business name in general, but then to make it one word is pretty interesting. So what's the genesis of that?
Yeah, happy to talk names. So first of all, it would not have been a big deal if you had put a space in there. We'd still be on talking terms. I still would have been happy to come.
That's good. I mean, I'm glad we were
So I'm not going to defend our name by saying it's the perfect name. It really bore out of how we started, which was a private event marketplace. And we recognized we wanted to be there for events. We wanted to be for parties. We also wanted to be there for upcoming anything, corporate, social engagements, whatever. And so the word occasion was one of the only words. We did that whiteboard exercise where you write all the words down that might be relevant, and then you start piecing them all together. So OccasionGenius was a good umbrella for experiences. And then Genius talked to the magic part of the technology that we have behind the scenes. And it also was just what's available by URL. When we got feedback, it was very positive. There was nothing like it, so it's great for SEO. But yeah, it is very long. People do not know how to spell occasion. They do not know how to spell genius. So not only is it two long words, it's two words people frequently misspell. I always have to remind people 2 C's and 1 S in occasion. Yeah.
That's me. I don't know how to spell genius.
However, we do have every URL, 1 C, 1 S.
So that was my next question.
S is, an O in genius, etc. We've got all of them, so it'll all redirect.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Google does the same thing. I think they have Google with 1 to however many O's to redirect them back.
I wonder if Facebook has bookface.com. That's like my new name for them. I just flip-flop them whenever I'm talking about Bookface FB. I don't want to say it. I don't want them to listen in, because it's odd.
Well, 10%, I guess, of the time somebody will say, "Oh, OccasionGenius, does that make you an occasional genius?" And I'll just nod and say, "Wow, that's funny. Never heard of that one."
Oh, wow.
But that all said, I mean, names are hard. It's hard to find the perfect name. Very happy with our name, and I see us wearing it for many years in the future.
So at that time, occasion wasn't being used a lot in the type of thing you were doing. That's how you came to that part?
Right, and we didn't want to be too limiting, and we knew that there was also a possibility, it still is, for us to grow horizontally in the future to be book genius, to be movie genius, etc. So OccasionGenius is really representing where we've started, which is aggregating what's happening around each person and recommending the right events to them.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that the name of it is really, to me, it tells me everything that you need to know. I mean, it's just working with so many different startups, and as I talk about the different startups to my wife, it's always really confusing to her because she's never can remember what company does what, and so OccasionGenius definitely does that. You've, gosh, I'm looking back at how many years we've known one another. It's been quite a while now. And I think it was a William and Mary event. You were practicing your pitch, and that may have been 6 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Feels a lot longer because of the pandemic. I'm sure we'll get into how an events-based company was in a perfect storm.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's fun to think about that because there's been so much growth over those last 6 years. I would say most amount of growth probably occurred in the first 2 years of the journey.
And that's where I was going. Take us. Can you take us through that journey of the past 6 years? I mean, one thing that I give you a lot of credit for is you've always tried to stay ahead of whatever was next. Clearly, very difficult with COVID, but you were constantly moving, pivoting, the overused term, but always trying to stay ahead of what was going on. Talk about the journey for the last 6 years and where you are today.
Yeah, happy to. So this all got started because I was teaching Iron Chef team building classes for groups at Capital One, Dominion, Altria. They would come down to this kitchen at Mise en Place Cooking School in Richmond, Virginia, where I live. Mystery ingredients, no smartphones, no recipes, go. And every time they'd have a blast, yell at them, it'd be like being on a TV show, hands off chefs, time's up. And I'd rate them on taste, creativity, presentation. And they'd always say, this is so much fun. Is this new? And I'd have to explain, no, this school's been here for 14 years. And they go, oh, but we have nothing to do. That's fun. We always end up going bowling and we're so sick of bowling. And after hearing this for a while, I recognized that no, Richmond and so many cities like it have so many exciting, fun activities like everything from axe throwing to bubble soccer. Frisbee golf, aerial yoga, et cetera, for these groups. And so I put together a site. It was just a free service. It was called Party RVA for Richmond, Virginia. And immediately, as I was reaching out to businesses to get info, they said, great, how much does it cost? I want more corporate events. And so I started charging them $200, $500, $1,000 to be on the site before it existed. And quickly got about 20K to create this site from these businesses that were paying before it even had any traction or existed. And so that's how I had kind of figured out that we were onto something here in terms of product market fit. Launched the site and had about 90,000 people use it to find corporate and private events. It snowballed to include bachelor and bachelorette parties, birthday parties, kids parties. And then by the end of the first year into the second, as we were expanding into markets, something happened, and this gets to the pivoting. More than 51% of messages being sent through the platform was asking, hey, I'm not planning a whole big event. I just want to know, can I do this for 2 people, right? Or can I come and do this food tour this Saturday? Or, hey, I'm looking for a date night idea this Friday night. And then our SEO or search engine traffic started to become about 70 to 80% of people who were searching for things like date night and things to do this weekend. So we recognized we should include more public-facing events to this online private events directory. And as we started to pull that in, we were pulling it in from Facebook back when they had a Discovery API before they deprecated it and all hell broke loose. I get ahead of myself. So we decided to add events, and they quickly became the big hit. Facebook turned off its events, but we had realized at that point that we had struck a chord with end users, and started to learn how do we aggregate events from all different places. I approached the investors. I'd raised about $750K at that point. I'd said, hey, I think that helping people figure out what's happening around them all the time instead of that one time a year when they're planning a private event, I think that's the bigger opportunity. And we got unanimous agreement from our investors that we should go after it, and sold the private event code, contracts, contacts, everything to another company called Eventzingo. And we pivoted strongly into solely an events aggregation service where we figure out all the events that are happening. It's kind of this impossible task of looking at all the different platforms, figuring out what events are high quality, are going to be popular, and then we enhance them with great descriptions, great photos. And along the way, met with some people at companies like Hilton, at Kayak, who had said, look, we would love to use this information. Would you ever provide it to us via an API? And as I started to learn about B2B enterprise sales, recognized that's the company that I want to build rather than trying to be B2C, structure this to be B2B. And so that was really our path since 2015 as a private event marketplace, pivoting to a B2B enterprise solution, and then raised another 2 million, so about 3 something total, all from local investors in the Richmond and Virginia ecosystem, to move forward with that plan, build a team. And then the pandemic. Don't know if you want me to hop into that right away, or we should take a beat.
We're definitely going to get into that aspect of it, but this is fascinating. Okay, so I think a lot of people talk about product market fit. A lot of people talk about validating your idea. I think a lot of people talk about, analyzing a business and figuring it out. It sounds like, party RVA is the thing. You just do it because you're an Iron Chef teacher, which is very interesting. I feel like I knew that and forgot it, but just to think about that, like that's pretty interesting. So you have an idea, you build a simple website, and then from that, it turns into something completely different. Like, how do you manage that process of understanding, okay, I started this and it works and it's cool, but I'm starting to get this other information and that seems interesting and cool. Like, how do you grasp that something is bigger than originally? Because I think a lot of times people have, like Tim and I were talking the other day, and there was a business aspect, and it was like, this is a cool idea. I don't know that this business can actually be that big. And I think that this person actually thinks that this business can be big, and there's just not a big market. So was there anything in that aspect of how do you go through not necessarily the pivot, but the analysis to do the pivot in something like this, where it's completely different if you think about it from, teaching Iron Chef stuff to people who had no idea that thing had been around for 16 years?
I mean, it's a journey. So at first, the idea of $1 million was an obscene amount of money to me. And then when I started to do market research into what this could become, there's no good private events comp, but in the wedding industry, you've got the Knot and Wedding Wire, which were about 115 and 90 million in annual revenue, respectively. And so we were able to extrapolate there that there was a big enough market for the private events marketplace to be investable. But I mentioned some of those stats because, every time you pivot, I think it merits the question why. And when we saw how much user engagement there was, I think what really resonated, a mentor had asked me, what's your North Star? And this was about 2 years in. And I had said, what do you mean? Nobody had asked me that question. He said, what's your North Star? The principle under which all decisions flow and make sense. And I had to think about it. Not too long. I said, well, I think I want to create a product that has the biggest impact for the most amount of people in the shortest period of time. And he said, okay. And from then on, I was like, okay, that has been my North Star. I didn't know it, but it has been. And I was able to make more sense. So when I presented this pivot to investors, I was able to start with, here's what my passion is, and here's what I want to create. And this is why going from private events to public events makes more sense for me. And by the way, here's why I think we can make even more money than before. Awesome.
So I want to dive into when everything shut down, because at this point you found you were rolling at this point, you found where you wanted to go, things were clicking, and then everything stopped. So what happens next?
Man, so we were hitting our stride. We're on track to hitting all of our revenue goals. And we had several proofs of concept that we had just finalized with large companies, and they'd come back with fantastic feedback saying, this is great, let's go ahead and expand. And then we had contracted with some of them. We were about to contract with some of them, and then COVID hit. This is about March 2020. And at first, we were like, okay, let's start to get in a room and think it through. But at no point in early March had we considered, and I don't know if we had been in a room for days, if we had come up with, what if all events universally everywhere were canceled indefinitely? And we were selling primarily to travel and tourism, and that was the industry that was likely hit the very hardest. And so their budgets were frozen, our contacts were furloughed, and we were in breach of contract because we had no event inventory to provide. All events were canceled. So we were also in the middle. For us, it was like all three legs of the stool were taken out. So the people we were selling to didn't have budget. The product we were selling, event inventory and information, had all been canceled. And then we were about to do a pre-A round. And that was mostly from leads in the hotel industry, and they had to put that on pause as well. And so it really was a perfect storm for a company like ours. We did have to get very creative about the employees that we kept on. We had to do a lot of restructuring. We had to say goodbye to many. We brought them back for PPP funds when we received those. We did a lot of restructuring to get our COGS to a place, kind of with the hope that in August of that year, we might be able to add on some contracts. Had to say goodbye to some of those people after PPP. So it was doubly heartbreaking, a really tough year. But in August, we were able to, there was enough virtual content and non-virtual content, hybrid virtual events like going to a brewery, picking up beers, going home and doing the Zoom live tasting with the brewmasters, for example. So we found that event organizers were getting creative enough to figure out what could be done, and that this was in high demand, that people were looking for this information. So we were able to rev up some contracts with an improved product that cost us less, and we were able to grow from there. So we're now back in 150 markets in the US. We've got travel-worthy events worldwide, and we're seeing real, not just signs of life, but pent-up demand for live events from consumers, and a lot of anticipation and excitement from companies to get in front of that wave. So one of the things that I was hoping for was, in terms of light at the end of this tunnel, was going to be, it could be a perfect storm in the positive sense for us at the other end. And we're seeing that's true. And so it's been very validating to be able to look back and say, I was very stubborn and we dug our heels in. There were a lot of companies sort of like us that just didn't make it. So we've really emerged in a great point where we can say, hey, we're not only are we the only game in town, but we've improved our product monumentally during this lull in contracts. So that's been the last 2 years. It's definitely put some gray hair on me here and some hair on the chest, as one could say.
It's hard to see. Still looks great.
Yeah.
I mean,
So, one of the questions that I had though was like, so now that you've weathered this storm, it seems like the market is coming back to you.
Yeah.
So as businesses continue to keep everybody at home, a lot of the strategy that the businesses have taken is, all right, we're going to have quarterly offsite gatherings, events, and that type of thing. Is that what you're seeing on your end as businesses stay remote, or maybe that's something that you need to start looking for as these businesses reposture how they are structured?
I think you're absolutely right that remote work culture is the norm right now, and I hope that it stays the same. We've become a distributed company and have really embraced it. I don't know that events are a big factor for remote companies. We're actually seeing the opposite. So we're working with tenant portals, community engagement portals, resident portals. And one of the things is don't just move to this neighborhood, or why come back to work in this big office building, because of all the cool stuff that's happening around it. So we're actually seeing events as a way for businesses to encourage people to come back to the workplace.
Interesting. So are you... Okay, so I have a news background, so I understand how headlines work. I think we've all kind of really fallen. Let me think about how I want to state this so I don't just put myself in a bad position. Okay, so there are some individuals who believe that headlines are really misleading and can be really taken out of context. A lot of the stuff over the last year, COVID related, is missing a lot of context. Right? Whether it be remote work or whether going back to work, staying at work, whatever. Do you think, how do I say this again? This is one of those touchy things. Okay. So remote work is something that you're encouraged with, you've pivoted towards and are seeing as a positive. What out there in kind of internet land of headlines and stuff like that are you seeing that seems to be kind of accurate, not accurate in your business and in the business that you do as a business when it relates to kind of COVID work, back to work policies and things like that? Because I think there's a lot of just like everything everywhere, and it's very like it's hard to understand what's actually happening in the world until you get on the ground level and ask people kind of, okay, like, what are you doing and what are you seeing other businesses that you're working with actually doing?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's been COVID on our brains. And I think we've had to have a unique perspective on it because we're looking at COVID through the lens of are events allowed to exist? And what is our civic responsibility to promote events if we think that events could be super spreader events, right? And what kind of precautions are being taken? Does it make sense to? So, not saying that we had to work through that internally to come to some decisions as these headlines were rapidly changing, right? And then as vaccines were coming out, and it's been like building on quicksand for several years.
So that's interesting. If you think back, just even like you were saying August of last year, you were hoping to get back to some of the stuff. I mean, are you making decisions there being like, well, like, I don't know how personally I feel about this. This could be, a super spreader event, or like, are you making decisions with that in mind? Are you building to the future? How in that aspect are you?
So we created, and we actually won some awards. We won a Battleground Americas award for best travel startup in the Americas in 2020. I think it was in July when all events were canceled. And that was a big motivator for us because it was like, we have nothing to sell right now. We're just telling you what we're set up to do after COVID. And the fact that we won that, I thought, again, shows that people are really interested to consume event information, even about things that might not be happening or things that are happening that they're not comfortable with. They still want to know what's going on. I think that people want to be able to be empowered to make the best decisions about how to use their time. And you can't do that if you're in the dark about what's happening around you. I think also what we created, which helped us with that award, was a COVID-19 flag. So the flag is something, it's binary, yes or no. And we're not making an estimation about if this event is safe. But instead we're saying, does the event organizer on its website materials expressly state that it is taking COVID-19 precautions, such as selling tickets in pods, mandating masks inside the venue, hand washing stations, etc. And so that way we're able to pass on to our clients a way for them to, if they choose to, say this event has stated that they're taking COVID-19 precautions versus this one does not state it. So that's one of the ways in which we're, because we sell our data to multiple companies and they have different brand guidelines, they have different use cases and purposes and audiences. And so really what we're doing is finding how can we standardize information, streamline information in ways that will work for all the brands and provide them ways to configure it so that it fits their needs.
You still do that today?
That's right.
I mean, that's actually pretty interesting. You're seeing a lot of stadiums, and a lot of them are saying the headline's saying super spreader event, but the stadium is sitting there going, well, I basically just did the things that you've asked me to do. What do you want me to do? And so it's very interesting. I like that aspect on there. So that's cool that you put that there. And it's like, hey, like, I'm still a business. This event is taking this stuff seriously. These are the things that they're doing. They've clicked yes. We've verified that, and we're gonna run our shop from that. Because it sounds like with that aspect, you're not playing in the scared lane. You're saying we've done this aspect, and we're letting people make that at their own decision. So I think that's right. And
toward the end of the year last year, when vaccines were coming out, I had thought that we were about to retire the COVID-19 flag. I was like, oh, it won't be around here for a few more months. It
seemed like that for a little while.
It's still there for the foreseeable future.
She's back, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So did you all see a direct correlation as hotel occupancy started to go up? Did your business start to go up as well?
A little bit later. So what we found in the travel industry is it's not that people are traveling necessarily. It's that the businesses are ready to spend money to increase the guest experience and incentivize more travel. So we've got two data sets, one that we call local curated events. These are the best ideas or best events that are happening around you where you live or when you arrive at a destination. And our next one is the travel worthy data set. And these are the best events, thousands of them worldwide, that actually incentivize travel. You would plan a trip to go to that event. It's on your bucket list, right? These are things like Oktoberfest or Great Vegas Festival Beer, other non-beer related events, of course, the Korean Mudslinging Festival. And so providing these events to travel companies has now caught on such that they want to provide a bucket list or wish list functionality. So they can say, Zach, Tim, select the events that you're most interested in, and we'll let you know when the new dates are posted for those events. And so it's given them a way to help encourage people, create brand loyalty, drip on them when new dates are posted for events in their wish lists or in their bucket lists. But I think that's only starting to really take off now. I think for a while, they've just been in survival mode.
Interesting. Jack, can you throw that comment back up there from Brandon?
Hotel industry interest makes sense. The API to individual property websites, local, that's awesome. So I was really surprised. This whole thing has been a journey since going B2B about how many different use cases there are across industries. And within hotels, how many different use cases there are. So I thought it might be interesting for like the stay phase.
Because it's value add to the client who's staying at the hotel?
Yeah. And companies like Hilton and others have given us feedback. No, this is valuable across all 5 phases of the guest journey. So those are the inspiration phase, where and when should I go? Companies know that you'll go off of the hotel website and onto Google or Facebook and start searching this information for yourself. And then you're susceptible to other hotel offers. So they're like, how do we keep you on this page? Marriott has made a lot of noise around how they want Marriott.com over the next 10 years to be the one portal that you go to, because they have almost half of the hotels in the world. So how do they get you to go to their site directly and keep you there for all of your travel needs?
And because you're an API, you're able to connect them to all those things instead of building a standalone site. Right?
Yeah, we call it like a Lego you can build really cool things with. Yeah. So we provide the Legos. So that's the inspiration. Then the booking phase, when you're booking, hey, do you want to stay an extra day? Here's a cool event you might miss. The pre-stay, after you book before you arrive, sending you what we call a proactive concierge email that says, hey, here are the events that you might be interested in, plus the day before and after to increase your stay. Then you've got the stay phase. So this is usually app integration. So this is increasing engagement with hotel companies' apps, increasing downloads, showing you here's all the cool stuff around you. And then based on what you click or what you say you're interested in, then comes the most exciting, in my opinion, part, which is the post-stay phase, where we can say, hey, if we know you're a foodie, if the hotel knows that you travel with a family, they can say, hey, here are the top 5 family-friendly foodie events happening on the East Coast with packages from our hotel brand.
Interesting. From an API perspective, is it easy to connect to a native app in whatever, and then plus just like a whatever browser at this point? I mean, is it seamless?
Yeah. So people call our API within 10 minutes. We knew we had to make that really easy. We knew documentation had to be on point, make sense. Our technical kickoff calls aren't longer than 10 or 15 minutes because they say, got it. Yeah, that makes sense. And then in terms of integration, it all depends. Do they already have a button for events and our information just shows up, or do they have to do a little work to create that? So,
and are they paying custom in that aspect of? Sorry, are they paying custom in that aspect of it? Are you doing it for them? Like how does the actual integration in a use case like that work?
Yeah, so we one of the lessons to get in the Fervent Four club is you have to focus. And so we've been very we started thinking about different widgets and could we create our own email product? But today, right now, we are very streamlined. We are just an API, and I think that's worked well because the largest companies, I'll say, they want complete control over the user experience. They say that they understand their users the best. They want to build it themselves. They want to have control over when and how users interact with their content. So it's worked out, I think, well for both parties.
Every big company does that, right? People get mad. Oh, why is Facebook not wanting me to have this YouTube link go on this thing? It's for the exact reason you just said.
Yeah.
Right. They want it. They want to control everything. They want to keep people there. They know that if you go over there, you're going to go on a YouTube tangent, watch 14 hours of video there. So they don't want it over there. And, the consumer doesn't grasp that often, but I mean, it makes sense. Totally makes sense.
And that was not an assumption we had going in. So I think that's a nice little microcosmic example of you don't know until you have these conversations and learn. And then outside of hotels is really what we got investors excited about when we raised money. But outside of that, I'm really excited about some of these other conversations we're having. So one of my favorite ones is with dating apps. So if you're like events and dating apps, what? 3 cool ideas. So the first is when you swipe, well, first is being able to swipe on events, right? Swipe right, I'm interested in this event. Swipe left, I'm not. Then when you swipe right, being able to see who else might I match with or invite to go to this event that's single and looking for is interested as well. So it could be a great way to find people with common interests. The other is you swipe right on a person, you want to figure out, okay, whether this is, the right person forever or for tonight. Based on what app you're using, you might want to figure out, okay, what am I going to do on a date night, right? After a coffee, where do we go do? So you could be chivalrous and say, I want to do what they're interested in. Or you could say, oh, here are some events that we'd both be interested in together. The third one I think is the most interesting.
Oh, boy.
Dating app companies, when you think about it, the better that they do in matching you to somebody, the faster they lose you as a paying customer. Right? The better their algorithm is and their services, the faster they lose your business, which is kind of nuts to think about because they're actually they're incentivized to keep you on the platform as opposed to getting you what you came on the platform for. Again, not talking about the hookup apps, more the love of my life apps, not love tonight. So for those apps, what we are starting to propose to dating app companies is, what if there was another version of your app, like a Better Boyfriend app, right? That allows you to see for her birthday, anniversary, Valentine's Day, maybe Mother's Day, New Year's, these, times when you really have to step up and figure out what you're doing. What are some great, could we create an app that allows for increased engagement for this huge user base to send them somewhere after they've made that match, which doesn't allow you to see other people, but does allow you to have that functionality of finding out what great events are happening for date night. So some really interesting ways that we're finding events can get plugged into ecosystems. Ride shares are another exciting one. If you want to know about the cool things happening, like the Bacon and Brewery Festival, which has bad parking and lots of alcohol 15 minutes before it starts, do you want to ride? So, and the list goes on. And it's been really fun, I got to say, to find all the different ways that companies have raised their hands to say, we want events and here's how we would use them.
Man, that's fascinating stuff. I mean, because when you're talking about like the Better Boyfriend side of things, I mean, it's just, it just makes me think of like so much can be learned from people by looking at their Pinterest page. Now, I haven't been on Pinterest in probably 10 years.
To say, but, okay, hypothetically, I'm with you, but yeah.
But it's like even looking when Zack was getting ready for his wedding, you would look at his now wife's Pinterest page. I would hear this from my wife, and it'd be like, oh, here's all the ideas that they want for the wedding.
Oh, that's how I got her engagement ring.
Yeah, I mean, so it's
it was
just
the only ring that was pinned, I guess is the word. Yeah, totally.
And now you're you can build something where the Better Boyfriend doesn't need to go.
I love
stalk.
that, and I also love Pinterest as like a passive aggressive way to say, here's what I want.
right from a like baby shower.
That's exactly
wedding.
what it is. Like, so you match with somebody you hardly know. Would they like to go to a jazz club or to a ska band, right?
But that's that's a consumer aspect of it. Well, I'm looking at it from a business perspective. If you're doing cold outreach to someone and you've done no research on them, or you just do your standard research, oh, I saw that you went to whatever university, or you live in Richmond. I mean, like, to me, that's like, okay, great. Why don't you find something unique about that person? And if you could do that from using the OccasionGenius API, I mean, I know you're trying to stay in the same lane, but like, there's a lot of options to do that with, and it's.
So we created what we call the event genome, and this is what we like to say is the most sophisticated understanding of what that event is like, which then can help you understand what that person is interested in. With what we call their interest profile. So we provide all that information to companies, and for travel companies especially, this is a big deal. Personalization is a huge megatrend. I think we sit on really 3 big megatrend tailwinds. So personalization, which I'll tell you about, digitalization, which makes sense, especially with COVID, and experiences, the experiential economy, which is getting bigger and bigger every year. Well, took a dip with COVID for obvious reasons. So for personalization, we're seeing that Google and Amazon are getting into the travel industry. And like Uber and Airbnb, they don't have actual inventory of anything. They don't have hotel rooms. They don't have airlines. But what Amazon and Google do have is oodles and oodles of information on each individual. And we believe that the businesses and the brands that personalize the travel experience are the ones that will win in the future, and will lose. The ones that don't will lose to more personalized experiences. And so what we're offering a way for the largest brands in travel that are not Google and Amazon is to say, hey, this will allow you to get more information about the affinity interests of your travelers. And help you build these personal profiles to compete with what Google and Amazon already have on them.
With that, did you all experience, or did you have to retool with the rollout of iOS 14.5 in terms of Apple's effort of privacy?
So we did not. So we are to date strictly a B2B API. So we do have our information exist on apps, but through customers. And so our customers have dealt with those. I'm actually kind of in the dark as to what the implications of that change up have meant, because it doesn't affect us.
Gotcha.
Yep.
What, in terms of how you all make revenue, is it just a SaaS play in terms of licensing, or do you...
That's right. And now DaaS is kind of one of the buzzwords that's gaining some traction. So data as a service instead of software as a service might apply even better to us. So that's right. So we charge, it's very, very much depends. We have an intake form for each customer. We don't want to charge them for content that they don't want or need. But we typically will charge on a what we call market basis per market per month, and then volume-based pricing based on how many markets you're looking for. We also have in this intake form a lot of levers around, are you just looking for leisure events? Do you need photos and images and descriptions, or just one of those? How many events are you looking for? And so on. Forgot to mention, we also have sensitivity events. One of the biggest reasons why brands haven't just tried to aggregate all this information, besides duplicates and copyright restrictions and all the stuff that we solve for them for procurement, is some of these events are just mildly or wildly offensive and or inappropriate to some of their consumers. So you've got things like side boob in pictures for Carnival, or gore and bloody guts in political pictures, or anything that's political motivated anyway, things that are racially minded or motivated or exclusive to a particular group. You've got things with sexual innuendos, events happening at strip clubs. So we've created a sensitivities taxonomy as well, which we provide to brands, and they're able to decide, what their brand stands for and what kinds of events they don't want to represent their brand.
Interesting. I want to circle back around. You mentioned the word focus. We had talked about everything that you had to go through during the whole COVID shutdown. How did you stay mentally fit during that time?
I think I can say I stayed pretty fit. It was a wild ride for sure. A couple of things that I just was very grateful for the whole time. One was people were, literally dying, right? The death toll was just getting higher and higher as we were going. And so it was hard to lose that perspective, even though this was so near and dear to my heart, and just seeing so much momentum and revenue and just kind of just disappear from day to night, or at least, be put on pause. I was still able to keep that perspective because of those headlines, right? I would say second, I just had a really lucky experience with a very supportive family. I talked to some people in the travel industry who went through divorces during that time, and just I realized how humbled I was to think, wow, no matter how hard it is for me to be going through something so upsetting on a professional front and a personal front at the same time, I just thought about how lucky I was that that the timing didn't work out for me in that kind of way. And then I would say the third thing is investors really impressed me by how they reached out to say, but how are you doing, Nate? And they were like, hey, I invested in travel and entertainment before a worldwide pandemic. I think, if they didn't say it, they definitely thought it. they had written this off, and they had said, this is beyond you. This is so much bigger. You could have been in a room for weeks and never come up with, a risk management solution to this situation, because it was just never going to happen. And I think that was a nice reminder and kind of let me off the hook. It was interesting, though. I just decided if I kind of give up, then I'm allowing, and this is something that I think I do a lot, and why entrepreneurs with grit tend to make it, and why grit is so important to the journey. The way that I thought about it was, if I hang off, I gave me all the cover, I could have just turned everything off. Could say, hey guys, it's a pandemic. We're not going to make this through, right? Didn't do that. And I think the reason why is, if I did that, I was essentially saying, I've got no more pivots, I've got no more creativity, and the reality of the situation is bigger than I am. And I just have, of the kind of mental structure that I don't like doing that. What's fun for me is overcoming whatever is being thrown at me. And I think that's where I get my kicks. And so I think for me, it was this exercise. If I can make it through this, think about the personal satisfaction that I'm going to feel at the other end of it. And that's just kind of the way that I dealt with it.
Yeah, I would think that hearing that from your investors would be a motivating factor to say, hey man, we're gonna ride through this, and we're going to slingshot way past what we thought we were going to do.
I mean, a lot of goodwill was created when they found out we're making it through and we're getting contracts and we're growing again. I mean, it just, again, I don't think they expected it. For me, I never wavered, because this to me feels like my life's work. Remember when I talked about my North Star is to make a big impact. And I loved, when I was facilitating experiences, connecting people to things because of the bonding experience. I just love facilitating experiences, and the ability to do that at such a large scale through these enterprise contracts and affecting millions of people. What would I want to do instead? So for me, it really was a doubling down on, this is my dream. How do I make it work?
Do you surround yourself with a lot of positivity in those things? Because I feel like for a significant amount of 2020, it was very hard to find a positive story, if you would, out there, right? I mean, and even just from you, it's just, okay, I have to lay off these people. I don't know where the finances are in that case, but maybe you had to cut back on some of your stuff. Oh, and every headline that I'm reading and every post that I'm reading on Bookface, everything out here is negative, negative, negative. Oh, and by the way, I am just this little business owner. Am I Thomas the Train? What do you surround yourself with to get through that, to be gritty and to be, the Nate Marcus of 2021, OccasionGenius award winner extraordinaire.
I
Actually,
think
won in
the
2020.
fact that the problems that we were facing were not brought on by me personally. So shame, blame, none of that, I think, got in the way of just saying, okay, it's kind of like survival mode. Maybe if you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you're like, I got to find shelter, I got to find food, it provides a lot of clarity. And I think I'm good in those moments where a lot's on the line and it's like go time, right? Kind of survival or fight for your life mode. A lot just goes away. There's not time for a lot of other stuff. Now, if it weren't a pandemic, and if I had done something that I just believed was wrong, and I was trying to get more credibility with the team, but I think that would have been a very different story, and it would have been really hard, because I'm hard on myself, and I'm always trying to improve and learn. But I think because of the nature of this crisis, where it was just so obviously a situation that we couldn't account for, couldn't control, couldn't predict, this black swan event, that I think we were just seen as the underdogs, and we were being cheered on around us. So I think it's very situational, but that's how it worked out in this case.
And because you didn't have enough to do, you started something new.
Started something new as well. Yeah, I thought we might get to that. So I really landed on my feet. I could never have predicted where this was going to go, but some local non-OccasionGenius investors who had known how much we had raised, who had maybe heard me pitch before. So I guess I'd created a bit of a reputation in our community, reached out and said, hey, how's OccasionGenius going? And I said, this was around in August. We started getting some contracts, but it was like, things are going to move slowly until, they suddenly move quickly. And they said, well, we understand that's your dream, but we've got this great idea in the fintech space, and we're looking for somebody to help us kick it off. We've got another founder who's got those golden handcuffs, right? They can't leave their company for a certain time. Will you help us kick it off? And I said, I'm not in fintech. But as we started to talk about it, the company's called Verdata. It's essentially a great fit for my skill set. It's an enterprise, B2B enterprise company that aggregates data from a lot of different sources, enhances it, cleanses it, standardizes it, and provides it via an API. And I realized that I had a great list of contacts and knew a lot of people who had helped me on my journey, contractors, et cetera, and was able to pull those in to get it started. And they're about now finished with their second round. And it's been a wild ride helping them kind of check off all those boxes for product market fit and product development and the early team. So I'm currently working with them still as kind of OccasionGenius finds its footing, and I again really landed on my feet during the pandemic. I think they say that entrepreneurship is one of the only places where you get to fail up. So every lesson that you learn is valuable to what you do next. And certainly I've heard investors say that they like people who have had failures because it means they're not going to fail in the same way on their dime. So.
Yeah, I totally agree. In the sense of people that quote unquote fail, I mean, they learn way more than anyone that hasn't experienced anything.
Yeah.
How do you split your time? How do you stay? Do you like literally block time off on your calendar that I'm going to focus on OccasionGenius now, and then I'm going to shift over? How do you do that?
I find that doesn't quite work because client meetings, you got to take them when your client says they're available. That's been my philosophy. So I find that just saying half the day I'll do one, half the day I'll do the other doesn't quite work. I think that expectation setting is really important. I think that, so I wake up at 4 or 5 a.m. every day. Early to rise, also early to sleep. I'm in bed by like 9. And that's because I find that from 5 a.m. to like 8 a.m. is the most productive time for me. There's no emails going off except for, England and India. There's less emails going off. There's no phone calls that are coming in. And I'm able to get into that flow state every morning that I just can't get into because of all the things popping up and distractions for the rest of the day. I find that the rest of the day is really me just executing a series of meetings, right? And hopping in, so the calendars I'll block off when I set a meeting for one, et cetera. And then any decisions that I have to make that day, because I've been up so early, I'll just say, great, I'll make this in the morning. And then in the morning, I'll make all the decisions based on the meetings the previous day when I'm fresh. And it really just depends what my focus is based on what the to-do list is and what's coming up. So that's how I've been managing it. I think that we're likely transition, but kind of got to let things play out. As Zack mentioned, COVID is very much still an issue.
If you were to talk to a bunch of students, go to a founder club, go and speak to the business owner less than, let's say, 365 days in business, what's something that you would give them from a piece of advice? I think a lot of people raise their hands and say, hey, what's something that you wish you would have done different in business or something like that, like around that same vein or around that same kind of like parallel, like what's something that, a 365 day or less entrepreneur needs to hear?
Yeah, I think that kind of advice is really tricky because I think it depends on where the person's at. My experience with like professional growth, spiritual growth, anything like that is that the pendulum can sometimes swing too far in one direction. So if somebody's really bad at taking feedback, they might need to increase some mentorship to, have a bit more of a sight into some, blind spots. But if somebody is so open to feedback that they're almost paralyzed because they're getting so much feedback before doing anything, then I wouldn't tell that person you need to get feedback. On the other hand, that pendulum needs to swing in the other direction. So I always try when I can to give advice that's really tailored to the person and kind of where they're at. I think in general, let's see if anything pops up. In general, Man, I think it's really about expectation setting. I think that you can rip out your hair and go kind of crazy okay, let me put it this way. A chief executive officer, your job is to execute. And I think the big dirty secret that I didn't realize until a couple of conversations with mentors later was you get to actually decide what you're going to execute on, and you get to decide what you're communicating to other people about what you're executing on. So if you're going to say, I'm going to, arrive at the moon, anything short of that now shows that you were not an effective executive officer. You didn't execute to your goal. If you make your goal a lot more manageable and say, hey, we might hit the moon, that's really upside. We're just going to get to the atmosphere, like the lower ozone. I don't know what all the different layers are. We're just going to try to get there. Then you can actually end up exceeding your goal. That's going to be really motivating for you and your team. It's going to show that you were able to lead. It's going to be like a proof or a milestone check for your investors. And if you exceed it, then you look good, as opposed to looking like, hey, and now you have to answer for why you didn't meet a goal. So I think I learned that a little late. And I think that it's helpful both in outward communication, but also just keeping a sane mind and making sure that your goals are, everything costs twice as much and takes twice as long. And if you're not accounting for that and what you say you're going to do, then you're probably setting yourself up for some hard conversations and maybe some hard feelings.
Yeah. So you've raised quite a bit of money with both ventures. Yeah. Gosh, looking around for Richmond and Hampton Roads, you're probably one of certainly in the top
10%.
I would say.
Yeah.
What do you attribute that success to in terms of how you've been able to raise money?
Here we go. I'm going to give you guys my playbook. You ready for it?
Yeah.
I don't know how many step program, the something step program to raise money. So I had never raised money before. Of course I did, and had not been part of a company that had done it, seen it. And so I had to think about, I can't sell snake oil. I have to have total convictions. I have to know that I'm going to work on this through thick and thin. And I did. And I want to be open and honest with investors. And so I found the way that worked for me was to reach out to people as mentors. And I would reach out to them mostly as mentors first and say, hey, I'd love to talk to you because you did X, Y, Z, maybe in analytics or marketing, or you've got a ticketing background or whatever that is, and would love to tell you what we're doing. And so I'd walk them through basically, here's what we do. It'd be basically an investor deck without an ask slide. And I would wait for them to say something about something positive. Not all of them would, but the ones that did it were like, this is the best idea ever. Where has this been? I'm so excited. Oh my God, when are you, whatever. Some of them would ask, are you raising? But many of them wouldn't. They'd just say something really positive. Like, this is incredible. This is a really great thing. I'd say, that's great. I was putting you in this mentor box. We're about to go raise another round. I should keep you in that mentor box, right? And what I would do when I would say that is, I made rejection really easy. So if they said, yeah, no, that's right. I only invest in healthcare, or I'm not investing at this time, or I'm not an accredited investor, whatever. Instead of saying no to me, they were just agreeing with me. Yeah, that's right. Keep me in that mentor box. If they were interested in investing, then they would actually say, no. I don't think of me just as a mentor. I'm interested. And then I'd say, oh, what makes you interested? And now it just flips the whole dynamic. Rather than me asking them for money, now they're telling me what makes them interested in our company and why they would be a good investor. And I just found that to be such a relief, because you're going to get so many rejections. And I needed to find a way to make it really organic and sustainable as I went through those rounds.
You're going to get a lot of rejections because the way that most people ask is just like, hey, I just met you. Now give me money.
That's true. And also I recognize a lot of the people who typically get asked are oversaturated.
Yeah.
Because they're the people you go to. So by me really working the network to find mentors, I think I was able to find more people who were really great professional success stories that might be looking for things, but just the community didn't know that they were available for investment.
Well, and if they're going to be a mentor, then that means they actually are going to be something more than just a check, which is oftentimes something that's incredible.
I think that's absolutely true too. So because of this, the people who have invested, for the most part, have professional experience that's directly relevant, because that's how we got connected. So that's how I did it. Nobody had advised me to do it that way. It just that's kind of how I found my way home, so to speak. And I also found out I loved pitching. So signed up for pitch competitions, won a bunch of those. And I was worried because of the pandemic, just to kind of bring it all together here, that all of that momentum might be lost. And when we started getting reach outs in the last few months from companies saying, hey, we talked back in 2019, or I remembered you guys as an events aggregator, let's talk. That was another one of those personal satisfaction moments where I was like, okay, all that time and effort spent building a brand and getting the word out, it wasn't to waste, and it's still in place. That it's a foundation that we can build on.
Was pitching something you always loved, or did you have to learn how to do it?
Not only did I have to learn how to do that, but I hated sales. I was scared of doing sales. I thought that sales was sleazy and oily and scary, and I just avoided it for the first several months. So when I said that I created a website and reached out to these businesses to get information, what I had done previously was actually I hired somebody to go out and sell for us. And when they didn't perform great, I started to think, all right, well, I don't know if it's their fault or if it's the idea's fault. I got to just figure this out on my own and get the feedback more directly. And I realized through those first few conversations that selling is actually just having a conversation. If you've got something that they want, if you've got a great product market fit, if the problem that you're solving is important enough, then all you're doing is just sharing what you've built and the love, that you have for it, and your plans and where it's going to go. And I found that the conversational approach was so organic, and I loved doing that now I love sales. I love the opportunity to hop on with a client and say, hey, what are your problems? Here's what we've got. Is there a fit? And letting them kind of drive the next steps. And that's been, I've found that sales is not only sustainable, but fun when it's about connecting.
It's awesome.
Rad. Anything we haven't talked about that you want to talk about?
No, I don't have a book, so I can't say buy my book. I know you guys have, Zack, you've got books. No, I think last thing I would say is lovely, love it. Pay it forward.
I'm also not afraid of sales like you.
There you go. Buy Zack's book. That would be my. How about that? That'll be my outgoing comment. Buy Zack's book.
What you were saying something and then I rudely interrupted.
Pay it forward. My book.
Yeah, Tim. Do you have a book that I don't know about?
No.
Okay. Buy Tim's book when he writes it. So just pay it forward. A lot of people have stepped up to help us in our journey. I love it, Zack. Yeah. They don't want help. They don't need it. Can't go back and help them. And so I've tried to just make it a point to help budding entrepreneurs and in the same vein. So I'd say if any listeners have questions, want to reach on out. You can find me on OccasionGenius.com with 2 C's and 1 S.
I know you're super busy, Nate. Appreciate the time that you've spent with us. I always enjoy catching up with you. It's been great.
You guys rock. Please keep it up. Love the show.
Thanks, Nate. See you soon. Cheers. Peace.
Cheers, guys.
Later.